Good morning, everyone. I hope you're well. I just thought I would do a few minutes on video just to outline some things around human rights and civil rights, probably explain the difference between the two, even though there's quite a bit of crossover. And also just talk about some elements of this that I believe are pretty important for people. At this moment in time, if you look at what's actually going on with the media and you look at what's going on in terms of behaviour, the restrictions that are being placed upon us by COVID-19, they do beg a few questions when you consider human rights and civil rights. And certainly the difference between human rights and civil rights are that your human rights are given to you by the very nature of the fact that you're a human being and you are born into this world. And of course, those are sacrosanct. Civil rights are given to you based on the community that you live in and the political environment that you live within. So if you lived in China, for instance, at this moment in time, everything that you do is monitored. Your behaviours are monitored, your spending is monitored, the way you live your life is monitored. And if you produce a certain set of behaviours, then you're rewarded for that, possibly by being given a passport and or access to greater employment that serves that political environment. And essentially that's a level of authoritarianism in so much that you're being controlled. But equally this is quite a scary concept, because if you think about some of the things that are controlled, some of the things that we can be on the receiving end of, then we have to ask, what does that equal at the level of our human rights? Because democracy is measured by human rights. I certainly joined the military to defend my community, to defend those that couldn't defend themselves, and to maintain democracy, as a lot of our forebears did as well. Examples of human rights are these. So the right to equality and freedom from discrimination. No one has the right to discriminate. The moment you make a list, you discriminate. So when you start to say Black Lives Matter, well, actually, the moment you make a list, you discriminate against someone else, whether you like it or not. All lives matter in my world. But I'm a very non-political person anyway. For me, the quality of your life is going to be determined by the way you treat others. And the right to life is another human right, the right to liberty and personal security. So anything that threatens that is completely against your human rights. Freedom from torture, degrading treatment. Now, of course, some of these are a matter of your opinion and your model of the world, the way you live your life. But equally, I simply work on the premise that if I say something that offends someone, then I've offended them. If I change my behaviour and I change my tack, then I can create a different reaction or response. So the right to equality before the law is another human right. The right to a fair trial. The right to privacy, the freedom of belief and religion, and the freedom of opinion. Now you think about how social media has been censored. You think about how we're no longer allowed to form peacefully. You think about how the police are attacking some of those peaceful rallies. You think about how the judicial system at the moment does not seem to be serving people that are actually challenging the current narrative. If you think about how Ofcom stopped the alternative to the narrative from being presented, and you look at the fact that we're told up until yesterday that there's the chance that there's going to be a health passport, so you'll be limited in terms of how you can travel. Currently we're not being allowed to work, and also then you start to talk about a vaccination that is likely to be mandated, which up until yesterday was certainly the case, and that's the way the narrative was going. Then you start to realise that we don't live in a democracy, because these are all the things that actually form the premise of a democracy. These are the foundations of that. And of course your civil rights are not the same as human rights, because remember, civil rights are given to you by the political system that you live within. And examples of civil rights are the right to life, the right to a fair trial, the right to privacy, the right to vote, freedom of expression, freedom of religion and conscience, freedom of assembly, and also freedom from torture or inhumane treatment or slavery. So those are civil rights. Now, when we allow these to disappear, we start to slide down a very slippery slope. Because if history teaches us anything, it teaches us this, that when people take power, and I mean people by, when I say people, I mean leaders, when they take power, they seldom take power with the intention of ever relinquishing that. And even if they do relinquish some of the power, you're always left with the legacy of the creep that's happened as a result of taking those away. But any breach of these is in direct contravention of the Human Rights Act of 1998. And of course, it incorporates and sets out all of the terms and conditions and applications of this in the European Convention on Human Rights, which is, ECHR, for those that are familiar with that. And of course, the Human Rights Act came into force in the UK as a result of this in October 2000. Now, we are in a situation where we're getting into a space where people are saying, well, you should be vaccinated, and you've got people that are for vaccination, and you've got people that are against vaccination. I personally am pro-choice, so I'm an ex-vax. I'm not interested in vaccination, never will be. I've seen a lot of the after effects with veterans that were vaccinated for a number of things before they went to the Gulf War, and I've seen the neurological damage that's been resultant of that, and that's been acknowledged by the government, so this is fact. There are currently cases when we look at vaccinations, if you look at the compensation cases, and I just think this is the tip of the iceberg at the moment. I personally will never have another vaccine as long as I live again. And certainly we would advise anyone that if you're thinking about vaccination, then you should make sure that you know exactly what goes into that vaccination. Because if you look at the Nuremberg Code was based on the Hippocratic Oath and the right to informed consent. And informed consent is about knowing all of the information around things before you participate in whatever it is you give consent to. So a doctor should tell you what is in the vaccine before they give it to you. They shouldn't have a conflict of interest. And if you look at GPs and GP surgeries, it's a well-known fact that they're also incentivized financially by the numbers of people they vaccinate, and they have to reach a certain number before that financial incentive is realized. If you consider that Big Pharma are so big right now that they don't even have to do any studies that show or demonstrate the contraindications that are resultant of vaccinations. And if you consider the amount of compensation that's being sought as a result of vaccine damage, they beg huge questions to me. And the irony of all of this is that the people that purvey these and the ones that put them out are actually... They have an indemnity against prosecution. So why would that be? None of that adds up to me. So therefore, if someone's not responsible for what they do to me, then I would have a big question mark as to why not. If this is so safe, why would it not be guaranteed? Why would they not be open to prosecution if they are guilty of malpractice? And so all of these basically outline the fact that if you look behavioural at the environment that we're in right now in the UK, a lot of these freedoms, a lot of these human rights and civil rights have already been taken away. So the question is, do we really live in a democracy? And in reality, it's easy to reminisce and think, well, it's going to go back to this, or it could be that. But that's the world of imagination. Behaviourally, we're in a situation where a lot of these rights have already disappeared. And I do believe that if we allow this to continue, it's only going to get worse. I think if you honestly believe that some of the measures that are being put in place are going to be lifted as a matter of course, then I think you're going to be very, very disappointed. And of course that might make me a conspiracy theorist. Well, actually I'm quite okay with that, because right from the off we pretty much predicted where this was going anyway, and people seem to have forgotten that. But that is one of the challenges. People forget what these politicians said 2 months ago, and then when they contradict themselves, nobody remembers what they said 2 months ago, so there's no real great contradiction. So that's just a few thoughts on rights and why we should never lose them. These are things that really are not given to us by a government. They are our rights by birth. No one has the right on any level to take any of these away, and when they do, you enter a whole new way of living. So enjoy the rest of your day, and I wish you all well.